we were discussing the sutras 42 and 43, where we saw that there are two types of samadhi or samapattihi. One is savitarka, another is nirvitarka. Savitarka samadhi is achieved when identity of a person or the ego with a gross object of concentration. A person is meditating and he achieves some kind of identity by constantly focusing on that subject or the object, not the subject. The subject focuses on the object outside, the subject that is within, the ego, the sense organs, everything put together. The individual focuses on a gross object of concentration, and along with the object of concentration, you have the awareness of its name. Shabdartha. Shabda Artha. Shabda means name. And along with the name, there are qualities associated with the name. For example, I say there is a cow. And naturally, along with the cow, the idea of the cow, the qualities of the cow, everything is mixed in that awareness of the cow. So when the awareness is awareness of name, quality, and the knowledge about that object, if they are mixed with the focusing or the concentration on the object, and it continues for a very long time, then it is called Savitarka Samadhi. Now, what is this Savitarka Samadhi? Let us see. Shabdartha. Shabda here means, you can also say it is a name, but it can also mean sound. So sound here means vibration. Now we discussed about the wonderful thing which is known as vibration. Vibration can be loud, or our voices, the noises which we hear. We live in a world of vibrations which constitute either the voices that we hear, the sounds that we hear, the ideas that we think, even they possess some kind of quality of sound. It is a sound which is subtle, which we perceive in the mind based on the external sound that we heard before. Say you say Om. Now Om is a sound when you utter, but even if you think of this symbol, close your eyes and do not utter it, Om and all the other mantras, the mantra goes on in the mind. So that vibration is still there. The gross vibration which gave rise to the external sound has gone, but the subtle vibration still remains. So sound here, Shabda or Artha, Artha will come to later. The Shabda here means vibration. And what is vibration? It is the nerve currents which conduct it. When you hear the sound, or even when you mentally perceive a sound, the nerve currents within us, they conduct it. And then there is a knowledge based on what you hear, what you utter, what you think. Whether you utter the word, whether you think about that word, whether you repeat that word, there is a reaction in the form of knowledge. The nervous current takes it to the center in the brain, and the brain conceptualizes what you have uttered. Every sentence that we utter, every word that we articulate, every sentence that we articulate is not just a mere sound or not a mere vibration. Even if it is a song or if it is some kind of strange noise, even that sound has some meaning connected with it. For example, when you see in the drama, there is a background music. Now that music is trying to convey the feeling of sadness. There is sadness in the atmosphere. So there is a particular kind of music which arouses a kind of sadness. So even that shabda or that sound or that vibration has an associated meaning. And the reaction which our mind or our brain centers, the reaction to that sound is known as knowledge. So we know that this sound means joy, this sound means sorrow, though it may not have any specific meaning. Or there is some sound which gives rise to fear. So there are certain sounds which, when you give or produce it as a background music in some drama or some movie, you will find that music itself conveys the idea of that particular emotion associated with that sound. So the reaction, the knowledge which we get as a reaction to the sound which is heard by the ear conveyed to the brain is also, if it is included in our meditation, Savitarka is the meditation where you start questioning what is that sound. It's series of train of thoughts is the result of that vibration. So that is the lower kind of meditation which is known as Savitarka. That which is Vitarka means actually it is knowledge, some kind of questioning, some type of analysis of the sound. So the meaning, the knowledge and the sound and its meaning and the knowledge associated with that, all the qualities, if they are all mixed up together, and you don't focus on the object, but when you are focusing on the object, the meaning and other things also come. So it is a mixed type of meditation or samadhi where which is known as Savitarka, meditation with question. Means there's a spirit of inquiry. Oh, what is this sound? If it is a cow, what kind of cow it is? What are the properties of the cow? What does a cow do? So many thoughts come. A chain of thoughts are connected with that particular object. Later on, this is the lowest type of dhyana or samadhi. It is known as Savitarka Samadhi, because the sound, its meaning and the resulting knowledge are all mixed up. This is what happens when we think of something. Even when you think of the Ishta, in the beginning it is always advisable or suggested that you meditate on the object, think of the object of meditation, which can be a holy person, think of his holiness, think of his nobility, think of all the good qualities he has. And that is how the sound of the mantra, which symbolizes our Ishta or some deity, its meaning, the meaning, what does the mantra mean? When you recite the mantra, it is important to know what is the meaning of the mantra. And then finally, the knowledge, which is the result of the reaction that is produced in the mind because of uttering that mantra. Or there is one example I am giving you, repetition of the mantra. First, there is the mantra repeated either loudly or in the mind. Then there is its meaning. It conveys certain things. A mantra is not just a phrase, meaningless phrase. It is full of meaning, which the Guru explains when the mantra is given as a spiritual sadhana. And then the meaning, the vibration which is associated with the repetition of the mantra loudly or in the mind, the meaning, the nerve currents which conduct it, and then the reaction produced by the brain or the brain centers. That is known as Savitarka Samadhi. So when we are adept in that, when we go on meditating like that, we reach a point where we can do higher and higher sadhana. So when we say Savitarka Samadhi, the duality of subject that I am meditating and the object on which you are meditating, which is separate from you, which results from the mixture of the word, the meaning, and the knowledge associated with that. This is the first. There is first the external vibration, this carried inward by the sense currents is its meaning. After that comes a reactionary wave in the chitta. Chitta is the mind stuff where all this phenomena is happening, and that gives rise to samskaras. So in the chitta, the meaning is impressed. There is an impression of the meaning of the mantra in the chitta, which is called knowledge. When you say knowledge, it is nothing but the reactionary wave. It is not the wave which is produced due to the sound vibration. The sound vibration produces a wave which is then conveyed to the nerve currents are carried to the brain, and then there is a knowledge in the form of some reaction. You try to understand the sound that you have produced loudly or mentally in your mind, and the mind has a preconceived idea about what that sound stands for, what does it represent. So in trying to decipher that, the brain gives its own analysis of that sound, the reaction. The reaction may not be the same, though two people may hear the same mantra or the same sound, but when there is a reaction to that sound or the phrase or the sentence that you utter, the reaction may be totally different. Two people may interpret it differently. So all the three put together in anybody's life, it is what we call Savitarka Samadhi. The reactionary wave also is very important in this, because the reactionary wave depends on the meaning that you have understood, the particular vibration that you have uttered loudly or in the mind. The vibration has gone, it has touched, the nerve currents have conveyed it, and a particular meaning is a result. And that meaning, the meaning can vary, it can change depending on the condition of your chitta or the old samskaras. So the old samskaras, they play a very major part in our understanding, in the knowledge that we get from the utterances. As I told you, this example is worth repeating. Swamiji used to tell in a very jocular way, in a very joking way, that somebody shouted at a person and called him a hippopotamus, called him a hippo. He was not aware, because the meaning of the word did not strike a chord, because in his chitta he had never heard this word before. It was such a big word. He did not even know it represented an animal. So he heard that word several times being uttered and directed at him. There was absolutely no reaction. But when he went and saw the dictionary, saw the meaning of that word, which somebody uttered, his friend or maybe his enemy uttered, and addressed him in that way, then he understood, oh, he is referring to my bulky body, the heavy body that I have. So he's trying to tease me. When he saw the picture and the meaning of the word hippopotamus or hippo, which he saw in the dictionary, so then there was a reaction. And then he went and scolded his friend or maybe his acquaintance who had called him like that. So it is important for Savitarka Samadhi or in Savitarka Samadhi to know the meaning. So depending on what awareness you have, what is the meaning that you have made out of it, whether you have got the true meaning and what kind of reaction or the true knowledge, which is the resultant of this thinking, that all those things put together gives a particular reaction, and that type of concentration is known as Savitarka Samadhi. But the next Samadhi is slightly higher. Smruti Parishuddhau Swarupa Shunyevartha Matra Nirbhasa Nirvitarka. The Samadhi, which is also known as Nirvitarka. Savitarka means Samadhi with question, with an inquiry, with a spirit of inquiry, with knowledge. Whereas here there is no question. But how can a word be uttered and you don't put any questions or you don't think about it? It comes when Swarupa Shunye Eva Artha Matra Nirbhasa. When the memory is purified, the chitta, as I told you, yoga is nothing. When you advance in yoga, the vrittis, the waves of the chitta become less and less. So the samskaras have to be reduced to such an extent that reduction of samskaras is by purification of the mind is what is known as purification of the smriti or memory. So, Swarupa Shunya Evartha Matra Nirbhasa. Smruti Parishuddho. Smruti Parishuddho means when the memory which you have, that has to be purified. When you say a man has purified himself, what does it really mean? The memory of that person, the chitta, is purified. Only when the chitta is purified that you get pure thoughts. An impure chitta will give rise to impure reactions, and that impure reaction is nothing but what we discussed in the previous sutra. When there is a word with shabda which has some meaning, that meaning is conveyed to the brain and there is a reaction. But if the chitta, which is the repository of all our thoughts thought during a lifetime or even several lifetimes, they have become petrified, as it were, and they give rise to new thoughts. So when the memory, the smriti, and memory is a result of petrified thoughts, the thoughts which have already been thought by you, and when you say the word cow, the memory of the cow comes, and stronger the memory of the word cow, the better understanding or the better reaction you have of the word cow. Otherwise, if you have just don't have too much of memory, you've rarely seen a cow, maybe you have seen it only once in your lifetime, you're not very familiar, then the reaction will be correspondingly weak. So the memory which you have, depending on the memory that we have accumulated over ages, over several lifetimes, it has been stored in the chitta. That memory, depending on whether that memory is good or bad, happy or sorrowful, strong or weak, there are so many factors. That memory will decide what type of reaction you have. If you have a very bad memory of a particular word or a particular person or a particular object on which you are meditating, the moment you see it, say somebody says the word ghost, and the ghost, you have heard lot of ghost stories right from childhood. You have been fed with so much of ghost stories that your chitta is full of that fear of ghost or ghosts. So whenever somebody utters the word ghost, then that fear comes to the surface. So that memory is very important. Now here the samadhi, without question, nirvitarka samadhi, can be attained only by a person who has, through practice of yoga, reduced the chitta vrittis. Reducing chitta vrittis means purifying the old memories. All the memories have to be undone or unlearned. Swamiji says Sri Ramakrishna was very original because he did not have any preconceived notions. He had not read and confused his mind with so many things. His memory was purified. Whereas Swamiji says, unfortunately, our minds, our memory was polluted by second-hand knowledge which we acquired, which may have been correct, which may have been wrong. So we are putting all sorts of stuff, second-hand knowledge. Half of it may be bad, half of it may be wrong. So one has to be very careful what we think, what we input, what we give as input through our sense organs. If it is full of confusion, if it is full of impure thoughts, the memory also is likely to be impure. So only when the memory is purified and it becomes like a child's memory, for example, is a very pure memory. When he sees somebody, it does not, the child does not think that the person who is come is a thief, because there is no thief in his mind. He has not been told thief stories. He doesn't know what a ghost is. So if somebody says ghost, the child is absolutely innocent because it has a pure memory. The memory has not been impure, made impure by constantly bombarding it with negative thoughts. So when the memory is purified or it is devoid of any qualities, expressing only the meaning of the meditated object. That is known as nirvitarka. It is by the practice of meditation of these three that we come to the state where these three do not mix. Swamiji says we can get rid of them. We will first try to understand what these three things are. For example, Swamiji says here is the chitta. Chitta means the mind stuff. And when you say chitta, you have to remember and compare the chitta or the mind stuff to a lake, a calm and placid lake. And the vibration, the word that you utter, the sound is like a pulsation coming over it. So whenever a water surface is disturbed, a stone is thrown, or you take a stick and disturb the calmness of the water, the calm surface of the water. If you compare our minds to a calm lake and the vibration, the sounds that we hear, every sound that we hear, every pulsation in our minds, all of them try to disturb the surface of the lake. As soon as the sound enters through your ears, there is a wave produced in your chitta along with it. There is a wave. There is a disturbance on the surface. So the wave represents the idea of the cow. Suppose somebody pronounces the word cow. Our mind is now, without the word cow, it is like a placid lake. The surface is absolutely without any old pulsation or anything, no waves. But as soon as the sound of the word cow reaches our ears, there is a wave produced in the chitta, which is like a lake. And that wave represents the idea of the cow, the form and the meaning as well. There is a form which the cow has, and the meaning of what a cow does, what a cow's qualities are. The apparent cow that you know, the cow that we know, is nothing but the wave in the mind stuff that comes as a reaction to the internal and external sound. Maybe you have internally just closed your eyes and repeated the word cow, or maybe somebody has outside of you has shouted the word cow. But only when the reaction comes, the wave is formed, only then you get an idea of what that cow is, depending on your previous knowledge. Now, this is very important. If you have seen the cow only once, you have one type of knowledge. If you have seen the cow many times, if it has become a samskara, for example, somebody utters the word gold or money. If one is possessed with the idea of money, always mad after money, then when he hears the word money, he will just run. See, where does the sound come from? Oh, his greed will make him rush towards that.
You've got through to the voicemail of Dr. Chollier in Polo Team. I'm currently waiting.
He will not wait to even think. The word has such a tremendous impact on his mind. The samskara of that word money is so much that whenever somebody says the word money, his attention is diverted. But if you don't, does not form a very important aspect of your life, then you may hear like the gold rush of the olden days. When they heard that there is gold, people just started running, not caring for their lives. Oh, there is gold, but we should run after the gold. So when you hear a sound, the reaction to that sound depends on what samskaras you have. With the sound, when the wave dies, the wave may die. It can never exist without a word. You may ask how it is when we only think of the cow, do not hear a sound. Then where is the sound? But we make the sound ourselves in our mind. You are saying cow faintly in your mind. It may not be on the lips. And with that, that is enough to create a wave in the mind, in the chitta. There cannot be any wave without this impulse of sound, either external or internal. Now, the sound is over. The sound has been uttered. Somebody has said the word money or rupees or dollars or pounds. It has created a wave in the mind. Now, when the wave dies, when the sound dies, what remains? The result of the reaction, and that is known as knowledge. The knowledge of the money still remains. The word is not there now anymore. Nobody is repeating it again and again, but one repetition was enough to start a chain of thoughts, and that rush for money, that desire to acquire money, that desire to uh, uh, find out all the qualities of money, what richness can do. So there's so many things. So also the object, any other object like cow or a lion, the moment it is uttered loudly, or so also when you do the japa, the very name of the Lord creates a continuous reaction. Now that is the reaction, positive reaction, which tries to control the negative reactions in the chitta and tries to see that tries to see that the other waves in the chitta are subdued. So the result of reaction, the knowledge, the hearing of the sound, the conveying of that sound to the sound or that thought to the brain, and the reaction all all take place so quickly that you can't distinguish. The moment you say cow, it's a very, very fast process. The meaning immediately flashes. The three are so closely combined in our mind that we cannot separate them. We can't say this is the sound, this is the meaning, and this is the reaction. They get so intimately mixed. When you say money, it immediately so many thoughts flash. When the sound comes, the senses vibrate. That's why when you see that somebody is very, very fond of some particular sweet, the moment the name of that sweet is uttered, whether you see that sweet or not, your taste buds or your tongue start watering, the mouth starts watering. It is already hankering for that sweet. That sweet may or may not be there. So when the sound comes, the senses vibrate. In the case of the sweet, it is the tongue. In the case of something else, it may be some other organ. If somebody says a snake has come, then it may be the legs, because we use the legs to run away. So when somebody utters the word snake, even if you have not seen the snake, the senses tell you run away, just run away from this place, because it's dangerous if the snake bites you. The wave rises in reaction, they follow so closely that there is you cannot distinguish between them. Somebody utters the word snake and you immediately react. Three processes take place. The sound goes to your ear center, then it goes to the brain center. The brain gives the reaction based on your past experience of the snake. But if you say the word snake to a child who doesn't know what the snake does, the meaning does not flash in its mind. So the child does not react like the way we react. When this type of meditation is practiced for a long time, this nirvitarka, when we try to suppress the meaning, we just don't think of the meaning, and then memory, the receptacle of all impressions in the chitta, memory becomes purified, and we are able to clearly distinguish them from one another. This is nirvitarka. So Swamiji explains what this nirvitarka meditation is, because when we don't jump to any conclusion, that is why a restless person, when something is uttered, immediately his tendency is to react. The animal type of person, the person who has animal propensities more in him, he is a very reactive person. Somebody says something, he just starts fighting with him, tries to give him a blow, because he does not wait. There's no chance for nirvitarka process to start samadhi. He is in the savitarka mode. The meaning, everything gets mixed up and then he reacts. Whereas a thoughtful, calm person delays this process, separates the thoughts, separates the word, thinks, why has this person uttered it? He just doesn't go and give a blow to the other person out of anger. He doesn't do it because he is more sensible. So nirvitarka concentration, samapatti, enables you to consider things in a very, very calm and collected manner, not just react to everything that is heard. Otherwise, our life can be very miserable. Now, somebody might ask, what is the use of having this nirvitarka type of concentration? In what way does it help us? It helps us because we don't become reactive. And if we are reactive all the time, then it is a very, very big strain on our personality. The stress, the strain, the worry, and the anxieties, and all the negative pressure that we feel in our mind, in our minds, is a result of this lack of the capacity to separate the word, the meaning, and the reaction. The meaning, which is the reaction to that word. If we can separate it, and if we if we purify in our chitta in such a way that there is no immediate reaction, the sound might come, but if the person is practicing this nirvitarka concentration, he can use the time that is available. He can delay or stop the reaction and consider the word and the meaning it conveys on its own merit and not just be reactive in life. So reactive persons who are reactive, highly emotional, react at every word that is uttered. They are highly high-strung personalities. Swamiji used to call them high-strung. They seem to be disturbed at the least provocation. Somebody comes and says something and they get disturbed. So that awareness which asks you as a person, nirvitarka concentration helps you to delay the reaction and behave in a very sensible, calm and composed way. We say a person is very calm. He does not easily react to things around him because he knows he has purified his mind, and this is possible only if mental purification, by constantly thinking of good things, positive things, especially a lot of mantra japa, if it is done, that subdues and purifies the mind and prevents it from going into a reaction mode. So all our awareness, ordinary awareness, is compounded, as Patanjali says. It's a compound of name, quality, the word, the quality associated with the word, and knowledge. When we look at a desk, we are aware of the image, the object, that which is a desk, the quality of its size, its shape, color, what wood it is, and all those things, whether it's a teak wood or a simple wood. And then our own knowledge of the object based on our past experience. The more experience we have, the better knowledge we have of that cupboard or that bench or the desk. And our through intense concentration, we become identified with that desk. But you should remember, when we constantly think of that desk or any other object, we retain the name and the quality and the knowledge that is a result of the reaction in the mind. This is savitarka. But savitarka is only applied when the savitarka samadhi or savitarka concentration is applied only when the object of the concentration belongs to the order of the gross elements, the most external order of phenomena. It hardly refers to things which are very subtle. In the samadhi called nirvitarka, we reach, as I said, we reach a higher state. Our identity, our achievement of identity with the object of concentration is not mixed with the awareness of name, quality and knowledge. We look upon the object in a very, very disinterested or a detached way. So that is why our Shastras say, try to practice some kind of detachment every day. Don't be like a emotional animal always reacting. Just try to detach yourself from the things that are going around you. It is a very big sadhana. Renunciation and detachment, they go together. What do you mean by detachment? Detachment means try to disassociate with the name and form and the knowledge so that the mind does not rapidly go into waves, and that agitated mind is not a happy mind. The happy mind is only that mind which can stay calm, composed, cool, collected, like the lake which is undisturbed. So for that reason, they say nirvitarka concentration is necessary. So if we want to put it in another way, it is, we will be able to still the thought waves which are our reactions to the object. That is the goal that is to be achieved through this nirvitarka concentration. Why all this fuss? Why all this fuss? Why all this idea of repeating a name which subsumes all the other reactions? The psychological advantage of repeating the holy name is that it does not allow stupid thoughts to come again and again. The moment it comes, it subdues it. So we are able to still the restless thought waves which are reactions to all the different objects, and to know nothing but the object itself as it truly is, the thing in itself. The famous German philosopher used to use that word. It is the thing in itself. Don't just color it with your eyes. Don't give it a different color. Just, it cannot be possibly be known by the senses, this or the reasoning mind. If we reason, then there is a problem. Since the senses and reason, which we are so proud of, we think we are very reasonable. Some people just go on arguing. It is known as savitarka thinking. And they don't come to any conclusion. And they suffer because of this argument. Argument has its own place. Thinking has its own place. But if it is overdone, so we cannot understand the thing in itself. A kind of detachment is necessary to see the world from a very wide perspective, or a very universal perspective, and not just be reactive like the fanatics are. They do not think to or bother about the consequences of their thoughts and actions. They just do things in a most fanatical and a reactive way. So Sri Krishna and Swamiji and Holy Mother say, I pity such people who are so unstable that they cannot pause for a moment and have a detached viewpoint on everything that is going around them. So the degree of detachment decides how much of nirvitarka concentration one has. And you see the things, it cannot be known by the senses or the reasoning mind. The senses and the reason can only present us with the subjective reactions. Our subjective reactions cover everything. We jump to certain conclusions. There are people who, even before the person who is uttering the word is trying to explain certain things, we don't have patience. We jump to conclusions, sometimes take wrong decisions. It remains completely unknown to us, the real meaning of what is uttered. It is always covered by our reaction. So, the German philosopher Kant said that it remains completely unknown. The thing in itself of an object remains completely unknown to us. What objects may be by themselves and apart from the receptivity of our senses is not known. We know nothing but our own manner of perceiving them. He was right when he said that our own reactions is the only thing that we know about that object. We do not know the object as it is, as a thing in itself. We know nothing but our manner of perceiving them, and that manner is peculiar to us. So what you think of a particular object will not be the same as another person thinking of the same object. Though the object may be same, the way we think is peculiar to us, the reaction is peculiar to us, and it will not be shared by every being. So when you say gold to a renunciate, to a person who has given up this desire for possessions and because it is temporary, his reactions towards the idea that, oh, there is so much gold there, he will not even bother. He will not care whether there is gold or not. But for another person who reacts to the gold in a different way. He just rushes after it. So these reactions are peculiar to each person. So when somebody says gold, or when we think of gold, no two persons will say have the same feeling or the same idea about gold. They never know the thing in itself. They only know the reactions that they have for that word gold, depending on how much the mind was purified. A purified mind will not bother. A mind which is totally impure and always being possessive about gold will have a different reaction. So Kant says who did not admit the validity of any experience other than that of sense or reason was forced to conclude that the thing in itself is unknowable. So he said, since everything is a result of the reaction of our senses and the mind, then the thing in itself of any object is not known. But Patanjali disagrees with this German philosopher. Patanjali says that there is a higher kind of knowledge, a transcendental knowledge, which enables us to see the thing in itself. But the only condition is it is beyond sense perception. It is not a reactionary knowledge. It is an intuitive knowledge of the thing in itself when we go beyond sense perception. It is also known as transcendental knowledge. So when we transcend the senses through a strict discipline of detachment, abhyasa and vairagya, constantly repeating the holy name, constantly detaching yourself from the gross objects, one day that capacity, the transcendent capacity to get transcendental knowledge awakens in a person, then only he will know the thing in itself, which the German philosopher, because of his lack of spiritual background, he said we can never know it. In a way, for an ordinary person can never know it. But that doesn't mean that a realized soul or a Jivan Mukta or a person who has completely purified his mind can understand the thing in itself, the essence behind all these temporary things, which is the Atman. It is a fundamental claim made by the practicing mystics of every religion. It's not just Hinduism or Vedanta or any particular religion. Even Jesus said, Jesus, or whether you take any other religion, the Sufis and all, that is the fundamental claim. That truth cannot, you can have partial truth through the sense organs, through our mind, through our intelligence. We can have a partial knowledge of an object, but to know the thing in itself, you have to transcend. And that happens only when you have Nirvitarka Samadhi. Nirvitarka way of looking at things. So only when you reach that state where through continuous Savitarka meditation, you meditate with the mantra, knowing its meaning and all, then slowly when your chitta gets more and more purified, this is a very, very important condition. The only condition where we can reach a higher state of meditation on Nirvitarka Samadhi or Nirvitarka way of thinking is by reducing gradually over a period of time the chitta samskaras which are there in the chitta. So they have to be mercilessly subdued. Every time it tries to pop up and create ripples, the mantra or the repetition of the mantra, the sound associated, the power associated with the mantra, the bija, in combination, it does the function. It helps you to somehow try to calm down the surface of our lake of our mind. Of our mind, chitta can be compared to a lake, as Swamiji says. All the ripples that are appearing does not allow us to see the thing in itself. So to know truth, we have to subdue with the help of repetition of certain holy syllables, mantras, stotras. We use them to subdue and make the mind placid. When we reach the thinking which is nirvitarka, where there are no reactions, but only intuitive knowledge. Now we come to the 44th sutra. I will just discuss the meaning and we'll discuss it in great because it was very important for us to know the Savitarka way of thinking and the Nirvitarka way of thinking and what it leads to. Now these Savitarka and Nirvitarka deal with the gross objects. You have to remember these things, that they refer to the concentration which is a result of meditating on gross objects, the gross sound, the mantra, or also the gross object. When we meditate on an Ishta, we are not meditating on a subtle idea. But when the object of concentration is a subtle object, there are two types of thinking or two types of samadhi known as savichara and nirvichara. Just as we had savitarka and nirvitarka in the case of the gross objects on which we are meditating. Verse 44, 45 and the next one will discuss what happens if the object of concentration is a subtle object. It is not a gross object like in the Savitarka or the Nirvitarka meditation. Then what happens? Etayaiva savichara nirvichara cha sukshma vishaya vyakhyata. So what it means is, when the object of concentration is subtle, then we have two ways of thinking or two ways of samadhi or two ways of concentration, which are known as savichara and nirvichara. This is just an introduction to this. 44 verse is just an introduction. So verse number verse number 44 tells us Etyaiva savichara nirvichara cha sukshma vishaya vyakhyata. By this process, the same concentrations that we are developing, savitarkas and nirvitarka, with discrimination and without discrimination, whose objects are finer, are also explained. Savichara and nirvichara means we meditate on certain subtle objects with discrimination or without any discrimination. A process similar to what we did in Savitarka and Nirvitarka is applied. Only the objects taken up in the former meditations in the Savitarka are gross, and in this Savichara it is fine. So we will come to the meaning of that. Savichara is samadhi or Savichara thinking is a lower thinking, lower kind of samadhi, and Nirvichara is the higher. What is the difference? Savichara samadhi is samadhi upon a subtle object, which is subtle object. In the previous case, Savitarka, it was the gross object, but now it is a subtle object, which is mixed with awareness of name, quality, and knowledge. As we saw, the name of that vichara or thinking, the quality, that means also it is a vichara, when we are thinking of the qualities, and then when we have a knowledge, we have still more vichara. So if it is mixed, any object, the subtle object, not the gross object, the subtle object is mixed with the awareness of name, quality, and knowledge, then it is known as savichara, and it is a reflective type of knowledge. And if it is nirvichara, which can be translated into English as super reflective, it gives us a slightly higher kind of knowledge, intuitive knowledge. It is known as nirvichara samadhi. Super reflective is a samadhi upon a subtle object which is unmixed with the awareness of its qualities and the knowledge behind that. Now, whether it is sthula or sukshma, as we have seen, sukshma vishayatva anchalinga paryavasanam means beyond all the subtle objects. Now you may ask, what is the source of these subtle objects? Gross objects we see the created world. There is no ambiguity in our minds when we see the created world. But verse number 45 says, what is the source of the subtle? Are they really existing? Or the dreams that we see, the thoughts that we think, are they not just imagination? Do they have a reality? So that we can talk of discussing or meditating or concentrating on the subtle objects. Do they really deserve our attention? He says, yes, as we have already seen, Patanjali says, if you see the picture of universe which Patanjali has painted in his Sankhya philosophy, which he has used for yoga, Prakriti is the elemental, undifferentiated stuff of matter. So Prakriti, through her, the manipulation of her gunas gives rise to energy and matter. The energy by which Prakriti is something which gives rise to phenomena, the objects that we see around us, and the energy levels and energy modifying these material objects, the phenomena that we see is a result of this Prakriti. But as the meditative mind, through Savichara and Nirvichara way of thinking, turns it inward. As I told you many times, the difference between a normal life and a spiritual life is the normal life, the gross life, deals with everything gross. We get all our actions and reactions are a result of something happening outside. But when we turn our vision inward, we'll try to find out what is this internal world. Is the external world the only world that we live in? Should we be so gross like animals that eat, drink, and die one day? No. We have an internal world which perhaps the animals do not have. No doubt, if you see a lion in a zoo or any other jungle, when it is quiet, they say it can rest for about 18 hours without moving. So maybe we can't say what is going on in his mind, but we can see that calm and collected look. That's why lion is as majestic as a king who has nothing to worry, because it's one of the animals who is not restless like the monkey or even the tiger, always prowling around trying to eat something. So that is typical of a restless worldly human being. But among the animals also, our scriptures have called the lion the king of animals, not because it is strong. There are many more animals which can be stronger than than the lion. But somehow the characteristics and the qualities show that it is the least restless of all the other animals. A monkey always seems to be doing something. So a typical human being, restless human being, if he can be compared to a monkey or an ape or a gorilla, then you can compare a calm person who is meditative, who has this nirvichara samadhi or nirvichara way of concentration, can be compared to a lion, because in nature we see the lion, a calm and collected and composed animal, doesn't get agitated so soon. So Prakriti has created all these things depending on the sattva, rajas and tamas. All the phenomena are projected. They don't say it has been created, they say it is Prakriti projects them. The idea of projection is unique to Indian philosophy, because as you go, as the meditative mind goes inward and probes through the outer coverings, try to find the thing in itself, the subtle essences are discovered as the first step through savichara. Through savichara concentration, the gross outer coverings, what is below that? What is the motive? A scientist, for example, tries to find out the underlying phenomena which are not observable to the ordinary eye. But when he goes beyond the subtle edge, nirvichara, when it becomes focused, the mind not only goes inward and gets the inner essence of a thing in itself, but it tries to go to the thing in itself. It comes to the avyakta prakriti herself. But still there is a mental block even in this nirvichara, because it is not the ultimate reality. Prakriti is not the ultimate real. Beyond Prakriti is Brahman or Purusha. The four kinds of samadhi which we have described now are all within the realm of the world, either the external world or the internal world. But it is definitely not the highest samadhi. The union with Brahman, the union with the Brahman consciousness is the highest samadhi. So Sri Ramakrishna used to tell a parable, and I'll end with this. A disciple once came to meditate on God. The teacher gave him instructions, but the disciple soon became restless, returned and said that he could not carry them out, whatever instructions he has given. He said, I can't meditate. So this is a story told by Sri Ramakrishna, which explains what are the different types of meditation and what meditation on external objects will do and what meditation on internal objects will do. What we discussed, the Savitarka, what it does, Nirvitarka, what it does, as far as gross objects are concerned. As far as internal objects are concerned, Savichara and Nirvichara, these are the four varieties. So to explain what happens to a disciple when the Guru tells him, he says he can't meditate because the Guru must have told him, you meditate, you start the meditation by going inward first, because all your life you have been meditating on the external things and you got involved in so many things that the mind has become like a monkey. It is restless. You have to calm it down. Once it calms down, once the mind is purified, then it can start meditating internally. But you see how Sri Ramakrishna uses a wonderful psychological ploy. He says every time the disciple came and complained, he says, because he was perhaps a farmer, he had a pet buffalo or a cow. So every time he sat for meditation, his mind was drawn towards the pet buffalo or the cow whom he was very fond of. He was very fond because day and night he was getting involved in that. That is what happens when we get over obsessive about our possessions, our things, and then we say we can't meditate. We can't meditate because if we have to meditate, then you can't choose to be both external and internal. But there is a way. Things are not as hopeless as it seems. So the disciple comes and tells the Guru that I can't meditate. The more I try to meditate, the buffalo comes to my mind because I've been living with that buffalo all my while. It was so fond of that buffalo. Then, well then, said the teacher, you meditate on that buffalo which you are so fond of. He was surprised. He said, how can it? The buffalo is actually disturbing me. Then he says, go to your room and meditate on the buffalo. See what happens. The disciple shut himself up in a room and began to concentrate on the buffalo. After some days, the teacher knocked at his door and the disciple answered. The transformation, you see what transformation has taken place. The disciple answered, sir, I am sorry, I can't come out to greet you. The door is too small. My horns will be in the way. My horns. He was a human being, but intense meditation on the buffalo has made him feel that he also has developed horns. Now then the teacher smiled and said, splendid, you have become identified with the object of your concentration. You have achieved the first step, but that is not the final. Now that concentration which you have achieved, which made you get lost in the object, get lost in the gross object that was the buffalo. Now that same mind you apply to God and then you will easily succeed. The same thing happened in the life of Tulsidas, and I will close today's discussion with this wonderful example which made Tulsidas what a great saint. Tulsidas was, after his marriage, he was so much attached to his wife that just as this person was attached to that buffalo whom he loved very much, because maybe it was his pet buffalo, he had seen it grow. So the Guru told him to meditate, but then he said, once you have that kind of concentration, once if you can forget the whole world for that buffalo, even in the room when you went, and when you are not seeing the buffalo, you became so much identified with that object that you literally became a buffalo, and you said, my horns are very big, I can't come out of the door. But that is not what the Guru, but he wanted to show that the same concentration. Now he says, now don't meditate on the buffalo. Once you have attained this kind of concentration, focus it on the God or the mantra that I give you. So also in Tulsidasa's life, he was a very worldly person. Absolutely, his wonderful devotion, the Ramcharitmanas he wrote, they were all afterwards. He was an ordinary, apparently an ordinary person. He was definitely not ordinary. But his focus was so much, he was enamored of his wife that he would not allow her to go back even for a few days to her father's house. He was so much attached. He had a beautiful wife. He was so much attached that this object, this gross object, he could not live without it. So that concentration was there in Tulsidas. But unfortunately, that made him, when the wife went and did not come back on time, he became restless to see her. So he jumped into the river, which was full of floods, took a risk and jumped on the back of there was a corpse floating on a wooden, some stretcher. He jumped there thinking it is some log of wood, and he did not even notice the smell of the corpse. He somehow managed to swim across, or maybe take resting on that log, on that corpse. And then finally, crocodile was there. It somehow he was saved, but he managed to cross the river trying to float on these two objects, which were so dangerous. They could have endangered his life. But his attachment to his wife was so much that he somehow managed to cross. And then with that dirty clothes and the smell of the corpse, he just went running to his wife's house. And when he reached, it was so late, but he wanted to meet her. So they say that he saw a rope hanging. She was on the first floor, or maybe upper story of the building. So seeing some rope hanging, he just hung to that rope, and apparently he thought it is a rope. He went, and then it was a snake. The snake fortunately did not fall down. It held, the grip was tight. So somehow he managed to hold on to that snake and reach and knock the window of his wife's room, where she had gone to meet her father and stay there for a few days. And he knocked and he said, I was so restless, I could not stay. I came this way. And seeing his condition, that wife got disgusted. So the wife got disgusted and she said, what is this? What kind of attachment you have? Are you not ashamed of yourself? Can you not live without me for a few days? You have come here in this condition, risking your life. And then she said something memorable, something which hit him so hard that his whole life changed. She said, if you had even a part of this kind of concentration or this attachment which you have for me, the physical body, or for the gross object that is me, if you have even a small little attachment of that to God, by now you would have become a great saint. So he had that concentration, but unfortunately it was directed on something very gross. So Patanjali here he says, and Swamiji also says, that once you identify yourself with the object of concentration, all it requires is to give it a different direction and focus it on not only the subtle, but something which is beyond subtle. And that same concentration, Tulsidas immediately left. He never again met his wife. He left that house. He got such a big shock that he used all his concentration and tried to find out what that God is, who that God is, and how to reach him. So his sarvitarka, nirvitarka, savichara and nirvichara concentration, everything, if it is focused on the Lord, the Sachidananda Brahman, which he ultimately did and meditated on the Ishta, that is Rama, and then became such a great saint by the name of Tulsidas. So this is a wonderful story of what misdirected concentration, if it is directed towards, not towards gross by savichara, savitarka and nirvitarka, not towards the subtle by savichara and nirvichara, but go beyond that, the higher type of meditation, if it is directed towards a proper object, which is pure consciousness. So with that concentration, one can attain the highest. So with the Thakur's parable shows that fixing the concentration upon God, one can easily succeed. So I've taken a lot of time now. I think there's very little time for any questions. Maybe we'll discuss it in the next class. Yeah, meditating on the word, object or sound, whether you do it out mentally or loudly, is it the same? No, loudly it's a gross meditation. So it gives rise to, as I told you, savitarka and nirvitarka types of concentration. But higher concentration, according to Patanjali, is where you don't utter the word, you think of the word. So the results, that is why mantra is always supposed to be after hearing the sound from the Guru. Once you internalize that sound, it has to be practiced without sound. And there's a huge difference. There is difference between mentally repeating and repeating it loudly. Just as there is difference between savitarka and nirvitarka concentration, savichara, which is, and nirvichara, which is internal, and then finally that mantra, the subtle repetition of the mantra takes you beyond, it transcends that sound itself. How does the mind lose its functionality like a burnt rope which has only a form without function? Yes, that functionality goes, that we'll come to that in verse number 46. Just have patience, because we have not this idea of Advaita Vedanta where the burnt rope example is given, which has a form and without function. It is a rope in just for namesake. If you try, it looks like a rope. After the rope is burnt, it retains the shape of a rope. Perhaps it has become black. Maybe it was brown earlier, and after burning, somehow it is not disintegrated. It has still retained the shape, the form, but not the quality. If you try to pull it, it will all go back to, it will be just dust. So that is a stage. That is why the example in Advaita Vedanta is given, that the mind should be made like a burnt rope, which will never bind. It binds right now because you are very gross. When you go from gross, when the Dagda Bija Avastha is reached in yoga, it's not in Vedanta. One should not confuse the two paradigms. In yoga, there is also a state where the thoughts have to be burned, the samskaras have to be burned. And those burnt samskaras, like the burnt rope, is powerless to create illusion of the gross world. That is how it is to be done. If we remain calm and not immediately reactive to external force and daily, is it a type of nirvitarka samadhi? Yes, it is a type of nirvitarka vichara. Samadhi is something which is very high. Even to attain nirvitarka samadhi, we may say we have attained, but it is not so easy. Like the concentration which Tulsidas had. You see, he could achieve concentration on God, on the subtle thing, only because he had that kind of intensity and that focus on a gross object. Only problem was the object was a wrong object. And because of that, by God's grace, the wife turned out to be his guru. And she said in a disgusted way, insulting him. And that was like a slap on his face, said, what kind of stupid attachment you have for me? Can you not direct it to God? So in a way, Satchidananda Brahma himself or Shakti herself made the wife say out in anguish, repeat these words in anguish, saying that why do you have this kind of you have this wonderful concentration, but please don't waste it on the gross objects. Just focus it on God and see what difference it will make to your life. So she literally put him on the right path. She was like a guru. So it is definitely useful not to react to the external forces the way we are doing, because it is like, if we don't react, then the nirvitarka and the savitarka way of thinking will give rise to the nirvichara and savichara and nirvichara type of thinking. Then you become discriminative, and then finally you transcend them. That is the goal of life. Yes. So I'll take your leave. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Ram Maharaj.
Namaste.